educational profiling. And on the line, I have Dr. Annette Martins. Dr. Martins, you can hear me?
I can hear. Good evening.
A very good evening to you. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for taking our call. I understand that you're still driving and that the the traffic has sort of let you down a little bit. But I want to find out from you, what exactly is educational profiling? I know you are with an entity called Edu-Profile, but just tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a difference between your scholastic assessments that we might do. For example, we might assess a learner preschool to see if he or she is school ready. We might, after grade 3, do scholastic assessment to check the reading age or the reading comprehension levels of a child. But edu-profiling, what we do, genetic profiling, is where we look at the dominance of a learner to predetermine proactively what potential learning problems a child might encounter or how they'll function in class. So it depends what we need to do. The genetic profiling or lateral profiling will always precede any other assessment. If a teacher tells me a child might battle in maths or the spelling is poor, I might know that proactively that it might be merely a left eye or the typical dyslexic eye that we have, or your child that doesn't respond in class, that are shy, might merely be left ear dominant, meaning it's a very shy child. So it depends what we need to do, but it will precede any other assessment, that I don't waste the parents' time with unnecessary remedial work that we could have prevented.
So if I understand you correctly, you are saying that there is a specific sort of predisposition that people would have as a result of being left ear dominant, right eye dominant, or right foot dominant. Perhaps take us through what it means when you say that they have a predisposition to certain things. Perhaps if we begin just with the eyes per se, what does it mean if I use my left eye a lot?
Yeah, we believe that all people are born with a genetic profile or dominance, which will be established already at conception. The problem is normally at school we will make an effort to determine what the child's hand dominance might be. But nobody ever goes and checks. But if the hand dominance is important, which sadly they often get wrong, what will the eye dominance mean? What will the ear dominance mean? What does the hemisphere dominance mean? What does the foot dominance mean? All those has got meaning. For example, a child with a left eye dominance, that child will always, till the day they die, read preferably from right to left. Now you put that child in the school system like we do, and we need to read from left to right. So every time that child reads, if it's a long sentence, if it's a long question, if it's a long word, they might not ever see details. So how can we assist that child with special eye exercises? How will we teach them in making their letters, spelling concessions? Because else the child never likes learning because they don't like reading. And now there's a lot of assumptions about the child which might be wrong. But that child possibly has got wonderful talent being artistic, being creative, that can conceptualize. But God forbid will never make that poor child an accountant because they might not see detail, or a contract lawyer, for another example.
So the eye dominance is also linked necessarily to perhaps some of the careers that these children should choose.
Yes, ideally.
Now,
because a left eye, for example, apart from being creative, it's a child that will be very sensitive in the normal school system regarding body language. Apart from the eye that will get distracted by movement in class. So now you put a left eye in a class of 40 children, every body in that child they're sensitive for if they move or they look sad or the teacher's angry. And now we make it worse and we put up beautiful pictures in the class. So that child will not only be distracted by the children in that classroom, but also the pictures. In the ideal world, a left eye should be alone in class without any pictures against the wall. Now the teachers say they daydream. It's just visualizing, which for them is a talent, you know.
Mm. So what should teachers be doing, perhaps after they've received these assessments? Because I imagine that it will be very tough to try and individualize this kind of thing. To try and say, because you have 15 left eye dominant children in the class, and the other 20 are right eye. How do we maneuver around that?
Ideally, once we've got the profile, the reports are quite extensive. I would also indicate to the teacher what the intelligences of the child will be. Is it, for example, the typical Howard Gardner stuff I've taken and split it. So a child with the left eye will write beautifully, but the spelling will be bad. Where a right eye child will write factually, spelling will be good. So we know how they will perform. But once the teacher's got the profile, they will need how to place their children correctly in class. So and we place them according to ear dominance. So your left ear kiddies, the sensitive ear children, my country club managers and Mother Teresa, we put on the right side of class. The teacher can speak into the dominant ear, while the left ear, the right ear kiddy sits on the left side of class. So it depends. The ear dominance specifically will guide where that we put them. Where, for example, if you get a child with a right ear and a right eye, that can hear and see detail quickly, I'll put them more to the back. Or possibly next to a child with a left eye or ear that don't always see and hear the detail, to give them responsibility, or else that little boy with the right eye is going to disrupt the class and get in trouble because he hears and sees quickly. So what is he going to do for the time while the others don't?
Now, so it would also seem to me that there are, a lot of issues of spacing and moving children around to accommodate the dominances that they have. Do you think that this is something that perhaps the public school education system should look into, to try and say, these are children, these are the 15 children you have? Because I imagine it's a little bit pricey to say, look, these are the children you have, they are the dominances, and this is how we're going to move forward in terms of making sure that...
What's the interesting thing? When we implement in a school, it's costing the school R5 per month per child.
Sure.
To do this. Because I'm so passionate that we need to make a difference. I wonder, when I was a teacher many moons ago, how many kids I damaged because I didn't understand the dominance that I had an impatient ear. So how many times did I interrupt a child? How many times did I possibly answer a question on behalf of the kids because I didn't have the patience to finish listening? And the poor child with a left ear dominance will never put up their hand in class because their fear is that somebody might laugh at them. So they'll never ask the teacher any question.
Well, I'm interested in a few things, as we continue our conversation, just how these sort of personality traits continue through life, and how some of these things are not, how do you say, how do they impact these careers? How do they impact the child's performance in school? Because you mentioned some very interesting points to say that the left dominant child, I believe it was the left ear or so, would not raise their hands because they're afraid of the embarrassment that exists.
Because they're oversensitive for verbal feedback, where a left eye child, again, would be scared of the teacher looking at them funny, especially when they need to read. So imagine a child in a classroom with both a left eye and ear. Those kids we find end up with self-esteem problems. They end up with a psychologist and psychiatrist. They end up in medicine. So it's easy to know proactively which are the potential children that will end up in remedial education. But what worries me more is when I look at my data, and it's just recently updated where I've taken 21,000 children's data, and I found that in special education, I find kids sitting there with a right eye and ear dominance. Imagine a picture where the child has got a right hemisphere dominance. At the same time, they've got a right eye, right hand, right ear, right foot dominance, all right dominant. So this child in school will hear and see quickly, be bored quickly. Now this child will disrupt the class, and the kids will set him up in class possibly because he doesn't mind setting up, and taking on the teacher. What's the problem? What we go one step further, if that child does get irritated, frustrated, so apart from just understanding the basics of the profile, we then can check if stress happens, and this is now a long conversation to understand the physiology of such. The non-dominant hemisphere, which will be the left side of that child, starts switching off. So now this learner can't access information from the factual side, the factual information, formula, etc., resulting in the hand, the foot, the eye, and the ear not functioning properly. So normally, this child could see, hear, function, write, and read. Suddenly, now because the teacher's on his case, because he's the naughty boy, he can't see now. He will not read properly, can't see his mistake. He doesn't hear instructions. The hand and foot, which we call blocked, means he can't write. His handwriting is slower. Everything with which this child needs to function suddenly is inhibited. It can't work. So suddenly now this child starts underperforming, and how will he get activity back into that non-dominant hemisphere, which is switch off? The only way he can do that is by moving, physically moving, and now they're all on Ritalin because they're accused of being hyperactive. But specifically, the more blockages a child has, the more they need to move. So that child I need to put on a Pilates ball or a wiggly chair to create in his spinal cord all the time movement for him to see and to hear and to be able to function. So you can imagine all the detail that proactively, if we know that we can prevent, because that child should be my entrepreneur one day. He should be a business manager. But God forbid, to get him through school is going to be a tough call because he'll be frustrated full time.
Sure. Well, let's continue the conversation with you, Dr. Martins. This is CAPS Radio. If you want to get in touch with us, you can definitely tweet us at CAPS Radio SA. Even on Facebook and Instagram, it is the same. Or my personal handle is at @ngwanamudimo_. We're speaking to Dr. Annette Martins of Edu-Profile. Just some fantastic insights that she is giving around left ear or right ear dominance, left eye, right eye dominance. We haven't even begun to deal with the hemisphere dominance specifically, the more art-inclined child as opposed to the more quote-unquote academically inclined child. And all of this, of course, links very, very strongly with the department's move for more vocational schools, more technical vocational schools, as well as academic schools. But this is At the Desk with me, Katleho Mogale, and we are speaking about educational profiling. But let's take a short little break before we continue this conversation. It is 6:45 here on CAPS Radio. My name is Katleho Mogale. Welcome to it. It is At the Desk with me, Katleho Mogale, and we have on the line Dr. Annette Martins, who is an educational profiler, I believe, and she works at Edu-Profile. Dr. Martins, before we went on the break, we were speaking specifically about issues related to dominance and some of the profiling work that you do even before people, get sort of placed in any sort of stream in the schooling system. And you mentioned something earlier on, and you said when you roll out this program, it's at R5 a child. Can you just elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, the whole plan is that once the school, we've already developed the software, so once the school takes it on board, we will then track the child's career or educational life from grade RR up to matric. So during that time, the school will have every child's profile on a system that the headmaster can log on to the system and see every class, what the profiles are, what the teacher's profile is, how. So, for example, after the maths test, the teacher can see, but how's the marks of all the children. We possibly will flag as soon as a child's mark is below a certain mark for specific children. Surely, I'm not going to expect of a left-eye child to get 90 plus in maths. For them, a 60 is like a distinction. But as soon as that child's mark goes below a 50, immediately we get a flag, an indication to the headmaster, to the parent, and the teacher that this child needs attention immediately, that we don't wait until the end of the year before we recognize, but shoot, this child with a left-eye's got a problem in languages, in the grammar, he's got a problem in the mathematics, he's got a problem in reading. We can proactively also preempt what will his challenges be, which we will communicate in monthly to the parents. We'll have workshops with the teachers of assisting them in how to accommodate these children. We don't want to do her work. She's the expert in the classroom, but we've got a lot of appreciation of how does she deal with 40 or 50 or even more kids in a class. That's what we will do for that cost on the side to assist the school and the teachers and the parents continuously until that child has done their subject choices, their career choices, to hopefully get them into something where their sensitivity will be used as a talent one day.
So what I'm also getting from this is that we need to move away from thinking that, that we need to treat all children absolutely the same in the class.
No, we don't. You know, that's part of it. In the perfect world, if we've got a big enough school and we've got 4 grade 4 classes, hopefully when we profile the teacher, we can say, goodness, we've got 2 left-brain teachers. She only has in her class left-brain children. The right-brain teacher, we will see that she only has the right-brain children. That's in the perfect world. It doesn't always work like that. In your smaller schools, you've got one teacher needing to take care of a gold grade. Who's going to help her? We don't have yet, like overseas, a class assistant necessarily. Who's going to help the teacher that she can proactively know what will each child battle with, what is their sensitivities, what subjects, how to teach maybe differently, how to, when she looks at the books, what mistakes will they potentially make related to the profile. And surely, which child will merely be frustrated because, so that right brain child with his impatient eye and ear, that will be continuously just frustrated, trying to disrupt the class. What will we do extra with that child? What extramural activities will they need to do? It also helps in sports, So the guidance to the parents will be online all the time to talk to us. What can we do to make their life easier? Sadly, I think there's a lot of money not necessarily always needed, wasted in remedial stuff, or kids that see psychologists. Now the child ends up with a personality problem or self-esteem problem, which I think really we could have prevented.
And perhaps let's speak about the teachers, because you mentioned them just a little bit. What are some of the things that you are doing in terms of profiling the teacher? Because sometimes perhaps the teacher may be someone who is failing to understand just how the other pupils in her or his class are failing to get the content because perhaps they're sort of right ear and right brain and right eye dominant, and they're quick to understand things, and they're dealing with a class full of left eye and left ear dominant children.
Surely the teacher's profile, her dominance, will also determine her style of teaching. So your right ear teacher will be impatient. They'll ask a question, and as I said, that's my own example, will answer before they've given the children enough time to answer. They won't be patient enough. Where in the perfect world, all teachers should have left Mother Teresa ears, that patient ear that can listen and be kind and, that can really handle the needs of a child. It doesn't work like that. We don't have them. Ideally, eventually, we should move the impatient ear teachers up into a management position where they can handle the assertive stuff with the parents and the teachers themselves. But so we know also what should the ideal profile of the ideal teacher look like. So when we sit with him or her and say, but ma'am, sir, you don't have the ideal profile to be a good teacher, but while teaching, you need to be aware what you need to do differently to accommodate these kids. If you don't have a patient ear, or maybe the teacher even has a left eye, she might miss detail herself in how she needs to deal with detail eye subjects. We don't necessarily always profile our teachers during teacher training, which I think we should do better. I just find often that goodness, the teachers are very talented, artistic, but then they want to be the maths teacher, or a teacher excellent in music, they end up being an accountancy teacher. I don't think we also stream the teachers necessarily into the right subject choice in what they might be a good teacher in. But often when they understand their own frustrations, it helps them also going a long way in dealing with the children better.
And what would be the solution, perhaps, on your end to those people right now who are saying, "Oh, I'm nearing the end of my career in terms of school. I'm nearing the end of my schooling in terms of grade 12. But I really think that this is important. Perhaps a grade 11 pupil, perhaps, a parent of a grade 11 pupil who's just been struggling with the same subject for quite a while. Do you think that they need to come through to you as well and just, get that sense of this is where you're dominant, this is where you're going to perform better, this is where you should be directing your attention, but also we're not going to just limit you to that?
Yeah, ideally we would like to see a child before grade 9, before they do their subject choices, because in that subject choice we're actually already considering the potential careers to make sure that they've made the correct selection to cater for such and whatever it might be. But surely, once a child is already past that, we make do with what we have, and then obviously the marks they do have in those subjects will determine that TPT score, which the universities will look at, and we'll look at various things. We'll look at the personality, we'll look at the child's temperament, and see which should they consider a trade maybe. Should they consider a company or work in a group? Do they need to work alone? So we'll also try and cater, should it be at a TUT? Should it be at a technicon? Should it be at a technical college? Those that possibly do make it for university entrance, we'll also consider all the detail and realities around that. Often the kids want to go for the romantic choices, which aren't necessarily the best choice, so we try and be objective in the reality that's real to them and their family, and obviously where they stay and will end up one day in life.
And finally, perhaps, Dr. Martins, I think we're going to try and maybe have a bit more of a frequent conversation with you. We're really introducing.
You're more than welcome.
Yes, just so that perhaps we can also get some other parents, to call in or to SMS and say, look, my child is this way or that way and struggling with this subject or other. But I want to know, how can people get in touch with you?
They can just email me directly at Annette, ANNETTE, at Edu-Profile, one word, .co.za.
Annette, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my personal email. You're more than welcome.
Fantastic. Dr. Martins, thank you so very much for your time. We're definitely going to make sure that we utilize this sort of a skill set that you are bringing to all of us and to us as CAPS Radio. But also, just a final word, what would you say to those matriculants that are entering the winter schools, and those that are panicking perhaps? What would your advice be? Do they need to find places where they are dominant? Is it too late for them? Just as a parting shot?
Yeah, I think before people go out and find people, the first thing I want to give parents advice on, please, the person that you find, please check their credentials and credibility. There's a lot of people running around doing assessments and profiling that are not qualified, that don't have PhDs in education. Please don't use a person with a deep philosophy degree. They're not qualified. But, the kids can do their profiles online with us and get their information immediately with guidance on what they need to be careful of going into a stressful situation, especially exams. And once they do the profile, we'll give that advice online immediately. So don't panic. We're merely a button away on a computer.
Dr. Martins, thank you so very much for your time. It's been such a pleasure having you here at the desk on CAPS Radio.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
And that was Dr. Annette Martins from Edu-Profile. You heard her. Don't panic, but also check out the credentials of people that you take your child to for any kind of educational profiling. In the next hour, we're going to be speaking to Steve Mabona of the Gauteng Department of Education. Don't go anywhere.